Stories, Philippines podcast.
Do you ever wonder what it means to be remembered? To have your story ripple through centuries, carried not just by family, but by the stones and shadows of a place? Tonight, we return to the palace that has watched over the Philippines since days of empire, where every corner holds secrets and every echo might be a voice from the past. What if immortality was not a blessing, but a burden? And what if the ghosts of Malacañang are not all dead, but some walk among us, unable to escape the weight of their own mistakes? I am Paul, and you are listening to Stories Philippines podcast. In our last episode, we explored the haunted halls and forgotten rooms of Malacañang Palace. Tonight, we peel back more layers, revealing stories born not only of revolution and power, but of curses, broken promises, and the unending hunger for meaning. Our first story comes from the days when the Spanish flag still flew over Manila, and the idea of nationhood was a dream whispered in secret. Lucas Jimenez is not his real name. He has lived many lives, assumed many masks, but he remembers the truth. He was born to a mother shamed by a Spanish friar and raised in Pangasinan by his grandmother, with only his younger sister Lina for comfort. Lucas was a farmer, a rebel, a survivor of loss. When Lina's child died and Lina herself passed away, then returned, smiling coldly in the dawn, Lucas's world changed forever. He tells it like this: I thought I was mourning my sister. Instead, I was welcoming her into a new kind of darkness. She told me she was thirsty, but not for water. She wanted blood. Lucas tried to run, but the doors would not open. Sunlight burned his skin. He realized Lina had dragged him into her curse, immortality, but at a terrible price. For decades, Lucas and Lina wandered the Philippines, hiding in plain sight. They learned to blend in, to hide their true natures. Lucas became an engineer, moving from city to city. Lina was restless, always seeking new faces, new lives. The two siblings were bound together by blood and guilt, each year growing more distant from the world of the living. But the curse was not just theirs. Lina, unable to bear her solitude, turned others into what she had become. Lucas raged at her, grief twisting into fury. He could not forgive her for stealing lives, for dooming others to the curse neither of them truly wanted. I do not want to be like you, Lucas would say over and over. But Lina only smiled. You already are. Time blurred. Lucas saw friends die, cities change. The world marched through eras of war and peace. By the 1990s, he had made a silent home for himself in Manila, close to the Malacañang walls. The palace's ghosts were nothing to him. He was an echo too, a living secret in a city built on secrets. One night, Lucas found himself drawn to a group of students. They laughed and joked on the streets near Alegui, unaware of the silent watcher in the shadows. Among them was Georgia Enriquez, cheerful on the surface, but carrying a sadness Lucas recognized. He began to follow her, not to feed, but out of a longing for connection he had almost forgotten. His sister noticed. Are you going to make her one of us? Lina asked, jealousy flashing in her eyes. Lucas refused. He wanted something different for Georgia. He wanted forgiveness, maybe even redemption. In the Philippines, tales of vampires called aswang or mandurugo are older than the palace itself. They are shapeshifters, blood drinkers, creatures of the night who live among humans. In Eastern Europe, these legends became the vampires of Bram Stoker's novels. In China, the Jiangshi hops after its prey. But in the heart of Manila, Lucas and Lena were their own kind of curse, neither dead nor truly alive, witnesses to centuries of secrets. Science tries to explain these stories. Some say the legends began with rare diseases misunderstood by frightened villagers. Others believe they are metaphors for grief, addiction, or the fear of outsiders. But for Lucas, the curse was all too real. He watched the world change and wondered if he might ever find peace. Even today, the palace is a magnet for stories that defy science. Modern paranormal investigators have visited, bringing sensors and cameras. They record temperature drops, unexplained whispers, footsteps echoing where no one walks. Yet, for every expert who tries to debunk the tales, there is a staff member or a soldier who swears by what they've seen. Sometimes, late at night, those in uniform hear chains dragging above them, footsteps crossing deserted floors, voices crying out in empty corridors. A retired Marine, Edgar Flores, remembers his time as a palace guard. "You get used to the strange things," he said. "Chains rattling upstairs, screams in the dark. We checked every time. There was never anyone there. What is it about Malacañang that attracts the restless dead and the restless living?" Submit your stories at storiesphilippines.com. Find show notes and support options in the description. Let's step beyond the palace gates to the winding banks of the Pasig River. It is here that many Manila children learn to swim, their laughter echoing between the old stone walls and the tangled roots of balete trees. But the river is also a place of danger, its calm surface hiding deep currents and, some say, more than one lost soul. One story belongs to a boy named Bugoy Ramos, remembered now mostly in whispers. Bugoy was the kind of friend everyone had, always quick with a joke, sometimes the victim of schoolyard teasing, but never one to hold a grudge. One afternoon in the early 90s, Bugoy and his friends dared each other to swim in the river behind Malacañang. The water was already turning murky, but the thrill was too much to resist. Bugoy's mother sent him out for vinegar, but he never came home. At first, his friends thought he was pretending to drown, as he often did for laughs. Then his voice grew desperate, then silent. They ran for help, but it was too late. Bugoy's body was found days later, swollen and strange, with water still trickling from his nose. At his wake, the lights went out, and some claimed to see Bugoy's ghost standing by the coffin, watching over the mourner. His younger cousin insisted that Bugoy waved from the doorway, inviting him to play. Even after burial, classmates reported seeing Bugoy at school, sitting quietly in the back row, or wandering through the church, missing his head. The stories grew with each retelling, until Bugoy became another of the palace's lost souls, one who left too soon, but could never quite leave at all. Stories like Bugoy's are not unique to the palace. Rivers all over the world hold the memory of those who vanished too young. In the Thames, some Londoners speak of ghostly children seen on foggy mornings. In the Seine, Parisians whisper about the Lady of the River, who drifts along the banks in a white dress. In Manila, the river is both a playground and a graveyard, a border between the world of the living and something else entirely. In the Philippines, rivers are sacred places. Folklore teaches that water is a barrier that spirits cannot easily cross. Yet, in the shadow of Malacañang, the rules seem different. Here, the river is a thoroughfare for stories, a mirror for the city's secrets. Some nights, boatmen claim to see processions of lanterns gliding silently across the water, led by a figure with no face. Other stories swirl around the palace's less glamorous corners, the dormitories, the staff houses, the quiet side streets where history's shadows stretch the longest. Dormitory tales are a favorite among university students. One listener, Mays de Chavez, wrote in about a summer spent in a cramped room near Ariano University. At first, the only worry was the heat. Then came the sound of footsteps on tile and the sight of a black shape leaping to the top bunk. Maze froze in fear, unable to move or call for help. Later, she and her roommate found strange handprints on the ceiling, too large to belong to either of them. The haunting followed Maze when she moved to a new dorm near the LRT station. There, the handprints reappeared, and one night, Maze awoke to see a man sitting at her desk, unmoving, watching. She tried to write it off as stress or imagination, but the experiences mounted. Even friends who visited found handprints on their own walls, as if something had followed Maze from place to place. When Maze visited friends in Pasig, even there the handprints followed, appearing on the walls after she left. Some say that seeing a ghost in your peripheral vision means it has attached itself to you. Others say that restless spirits follow those who glimpse them, looking for a way to be remembered. Why do some places seem to collect more ghosts than others? Psychologists suggest that trauma lingers in the environment, creating pockets of unease. Scientists point to molds and toxins in old buildings, or to carbon monoxide leaks causing hallucinations. But for those who live through these experiences, no rational explanation can erase the feeling that they are not alone. Another listener, Gabrielle Uwe, spent years as a student assistant and part-time tour guide in a restaurant near Malacañang. She and her friend Lynn shared a dorm room, just 2 double-deck beds and a curtain for privacy. One night, while Lynn was in the bathroom, Gabrielle saw a figure leap onto the top bunk. Jet black, with curling hair. Paralyzed with fear, she called for Lynn, but when they looked, the bed was empty. The 2 girls prayed together, hoping to drive the apparition away. But the thing followed Gabrielle to her next dorm, and then to her friend's house in Pasig. Each time, the ghost left a mark, a dusty handprint, a cold spot, an open cabinet at 3 a.m. The pattern only ended when Gabrielle returned home for good. Wherever you go near Malacañang, stories follow. Some are old as the palace walls. Others are as new as today's headlines. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts. Find show notes and support options in the description. Let's return to the palace itself, where the line between the past and present is as thin as the veils of dusk. The upper floors, with their thick cement ceilings and labyrinthine halls, have always drawn stories. One such account comes from Marco Sebastian, a police officer who once served in the palace's security detail. Marco remembers long nights on patrol with fellow officers, pacing the deserted upper floors while the city below pulsed with life. One evening, a sound echoed through the stone, footsteps, heavy yet quick, as if someone was running just above them. The ceiling was thick, the floor above locked and empty, yet the footsteps continued. Then came the unmistakable rattle of chains dragging across concrete. Marco and his team checked every room, every stairwell, but found only silence and shadow. Sometimes the noises would give way to screams, so vivid and piercing that the veteran officers would freeze in place. Marco said, "You get used to it, but you never stop feeling that chill. It's as if the palace remembers everything and plays it back for those who are willing to listen." Even after years away from Malacañang, the memory of those sounds haunts him. These tales are more than superstition. In many cultures, the belief that stone and wood can absorb memory is ancient. In England, the Tower of London is said to echo with the screams of the executed. In France, Versailles is haunted by the laughter of courtiers and the sobs of the fallen. Malacañang, too, is a container for the country's joys and sorrows, but the stories are also shaped by faith. Many palace workers, faced with things they cannot explain, turn to prayer. Some bring holy medals, sprinkle salt in corners, or burn incense to ward off evil. Others request blessings from priests or pastors, hoping to protect themselves from the unseen. Father Adrian Bautista, a priest who has blessed the palace more than once, believes these rituals matter. The palace is a battleground of spirits, he says. Each leader brings their own burdens, and the walls remember. To pray is to ask for peace, not just for the living, but for those who cannot move on. Yet, not all spirits in Malacañang are angry or lost. Some are protectors, guardians, who linger out of duty or love. There are stories of lost documents reappearing just when they are needed, or of invisible hands nudging a sleepy guard awake before disaster strikes. These are the palace's good ghosts, the ones who remind the living to be vigilant, to do right by those who came before. One such tale comes from the archives, deep in the oldest part of the palace. An archivist named Elsie de la Cruz spent years cataloging fragile papers in the dim light of the stacks. She often worked alone, surrounded by the musty scent of history. Sometimes, when she grew tired and her eyelids drooped, she would feel a cold breeze and a gentle tap on her shoulder. She would wake to find a file she had misplaced, neatly stacked beside her. Elsie always whispered her thanks, believing it was one of the palace's many unseen caretakers. These guardian spirits are not unique to the Philippines. In Japan, Shinto priests speak of kami, protective forces that inhabit places and objects. In the West, stories abound of white ladies and kind ghosts watching over ancestral homes. Malacañang's benevolent presences are part of this global tapestry, a reminder that not every haunting is a curse. Still, the darker stories persist. Some rooms in the palace remain off limits after dark. New staff are warned not to linger in certain hallways, not to answer if someone knocks at the state dining room after midnight. Old-timers speak of a woman in a Spanish gown, her hair long and tangled, who appears in the mirrors and disappears if you speak her name. Outside, in the oldest parts of the city, the stories ripple outward. In the ancient streets of Quiapo, in crumbling mansions left over from the Spanish era, more tales emerge. One traveler, Samuel Reyes, recounted an encounter at the lighthouse in Ilocos Norte, a shadowy figure who turned out to be the long-dead caretaker, warning visitors to respect the place or risk being followed by spirits. In every province, every old house, every river, the same lesson repeats. Honor the past, or it will not let you go. Why do these stories thrive? Science and skepticism play their part, but so do longing and guilt. The Philippines is a country that has survived invasion, colonization, revolution, and dictatorship. Its people carry collective memories of loss and resilience. The palace, with its empty chair at every feast, stands as a symbol, a reminder to be humble, to remember, to listen. Submit your stories at storiesphilippines.com. Access exclusive content on Patreon. Find show notes and support options in the description. Let's linger on a question that haunts Malacañang as much as any ghost. What does it mean to inherit history? For every president who sits at the head of the table, there is an empty chair, sometimes left for practical reasons, but more often for tradition. The staff call it the guest's chair. It is said that to fill every seat is to invite misfortune, to tempt the spirits of the past to make their presence known. Across cultures, the empty seat has meaning. In Jewish tradition, a cup and a chair are left for Elijah during Passover. In Ireland, an empty place is set for the fairies, lest they take offense and cause trouble. Here, in the seat of power, the chair is a quiet reminder that the living are never truly alone. There are stories from the palace kitchen, too, of plates vanishing from tables, of silverware rearranged, of meals prepared for more people than are present. One chef, Lorenzo Ventura, described how late at night he would sometimes find a plate inexplicably set at the far end of the table, a fork and knife crossed neatly, as if waiting for someone missing. "We do not touch it," Lorenzo said. "We just let it be. Everyone knows who it is for." For the palace staff, these customs are more than superstition. They are acts of respect for the unseen, ways of acknowledging that history is larger than any one person, and that every action is watched by those who came before. Some say that the ghosts grow restless when their stories are forgotten. Others believe that honoring them brings good fortune, or at least keeps mischief to a minimum. But sometimes the empty chair is more than a symbol. There are tales of visitors arriving for banquets only to find their assigned seat freezing cold, or their napkin damp with dew. One diplomat from Europe reportedly stood to give a toast, only to find his wine glass shattered in his hand. The staff whispered afterward that he had unknowingly taken the guest's seat and that the palace did not approve. Stories like these cross borders and centuries. In Windsor Castle, the Queen's Guard speak of phantom guests at royal banquets, their chairs moving by themselves. In the White House, staff leave a light on in Lincoln's old room, believing it keeps his spirit calm. Malacañang's traditions are part of this tapestry of haunted power, a reminder that leadership is never just about the present, but about the debts and promises of the past. Modern science tries to unravel these mysteries. Psychologists say that places associated with trauma or celebration become charged with meaning, shaping the perceptions of those who enter them. Architects point to the acoustics of old buildings, to drafts and echoes that play tricks on the mind. Historians remind us that rituals, even those rooted in fear, help people cope with uncertainty. But there is something about the palace that resists easy explanation. Its walls have seen revolutions and betrayals, weddings and funerals, the rise and fall of families, the birth of a nation. Every president brings their own ghosts, their own burdens. Every staff member becomes a part of the living memory of the place. And so the empty chair remains, a question, a warning, a hope. In every state dinner, every midnight meeting, every lonely walk through the halls, the chair asks, "Who do you serve? Whose absence weighs on your heart? What stories are you leaving behind?" Submit your stories at storiesphilippines.com. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts. Find show notes and support options in the description. Access exclusive content on Patreon. Let's leave the banquet halls for a moment and walk the palace grounds. The gardens and courtyards, once the domain of Spanish governors and American generals, now serve as quiet refuges for those who work behind the scenes. But even here, the past lingers. One night, security guard Rafael Domingo was making his rounds near the ancient balete tree. He paused under its sprawling branches, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and old tobacco. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of glowing eyes in the darkness. A deep, rumbling laugh echoed among the roots. Raphael knew at once. This was the Capre, Mr. Brown, the palace's most famous supernatural resident. Mr. Brown is a legend among the staff, a giant spirit who watches from his tree, sometimes seen with a cigar, sometimes just a cloud of smoke. He is not feared but respected. Guards leave offerings of sweets and tobacco at the tree's base, hoping to win his favor, or at least avoid his pranks. Those who disrespect the tree, by shouting, littering, or ignoring the old rituals, report sudden chills, lost keys, or the sensation of being watched for days afterward. Other countries have similar legends. In West Africa, sacred trees are said to house ancestral spirits. In Brazil, the curupira guards the forests, punishing those who take more than they need. The Capre reminds us that the line between myth and memory is thin, and that even in a world of technology and science, some stories refuse to fade. Moving indoors again, we find that not all hauntings are seen, some are felt. Palace employees often speak of a heavy atmosphere, the sense that the air itself is charged, especially at night. One housekeeper, Angela Lim, described entering the music room after midnight to tidy up for a morning meeting. She found the room cold and silent, yet the grand piano played a single note as she crossed the floor. Angela paused, her heart pounding. She whispered a prayer, finished her work, and left the room without looking back. It is easy to dismiss such moments as nerves or imagination, but when the same stories are told by generations of workers, across different eras and backgrounds, they become part of the palace's identity. The music room, the ceremonial hall, the state dining room, each has its own reputation. Some rooms are said to attract laughter and light, others, sorrow and regret. The staff learn which places to avoid, which doors to knock on before entering, which mirrors to cover at night. Many believe the palace's ghosts are most active during times of national crisis. When the country faces scandal, upheaval, or grief, the stories multiply. Lights flicker more often. Unfamiliar footsteps echo in the halls. The empty chair at the feast becomes more than a symbol. It is a silent witness to the burdens of leadership. The theological perspective offers another layer. Some priests and spiritual advisors see Malacañang as a thin place where the boundary between worlds is fragile. Every prayer, every blessing, every act of remembrance is a way of reinforcing that barrier, of keeping the living and the dead in their proper places. Father Adrian Bautista, who has blessed the palace, says, "We pray not to drive the spirits away, but to bring peace. We ask that those who are restless find rest, and that those who are burdened find comfort." He believes that by honoring the memories of the past, the living can move forward without fear. Science has its explanations too. Environmental psychologists say that old buildings, with their drafts, echoes, and unpredictable temperature shifts, can trigger feelings of unease. Historians point out that rituals and stories help people cope with uncertainty and change. Yet even skeptics admit that some places feel different, heavier, more alive, more aware. For those who work in Malacañang, the difference is unmistakable. The palace is not just a monument or a workplace. It is a living, breathing participant in the nation's story. Its ghosts, whether real or imagined, are reminders of everything that has come before and everything that still waits to be written. Submit your stories at storiesfilipinas.com. Find show notes and support options in the description. Access exclusive content on Patreon. Let's journey beyond Malacañang's walls for a moment to the towns and provinces that help shape its stories. In the far north, the lighthouse in Ilocos Norte stands tall against the wind, a witness to storms and shipwrecks. Travelers come for the view, but many leave with a story of their own. Avis Mendoza, a solo backpacker, shared her experience at the lighthouse. She met an old caretaker who warned her never to enter certain rooms. Later, she learned that the caretaker had passed away years before. Locals said that those who see him must visit the church and pray, or risk carrying something home with them, an echo of the spirit's unfinished business. Such stories are not rare. In nearly every province, there are places where the past feels closer, where the living and the dead share space. In these places, the rules are simple. Show respect, mind your words, and never ignore the warnings of those who came before. Rituals, whether a whispered prayer, a left-behind flower, or a pause before entering, are ways of acknowledging the world's layers. Back in Manila, the palace's influence stretches into the daily lives of those who live nearby. Neighborhood children dare each other to walk past the balate tree at night. Vendors share rumors of a shadowy man seen smoking beneath the branches, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. Even taxi drivers slow their cars and cross themselves as they pass the gates, hoping for a peaceful shift. The stories ripple outward, connecting the powerful and the powerless, the remembered and the forgotten. For every tale of a president's ghost or a haunted banquet hall, there is another about a missing child, a lost worker, a woman in white seen drifting along the riverbank. Malacañang is the heart, but the stories are the veins, spreading far beyond the palace to touch every part of the country. For the people who work inside the palace, the line between fear and familiarity is thin. Many have grown up with these stories, learning from parents or grandparents who were themselves part of the palace's staff. Over the years, the ghosts become less frightening, more like old neighbors, sometimes bothersome, sometimes comforting, always present. Some are judgment and more fear, always present. One such worker, Maricel Gutierrez, has been a housekeeper in Malacañang for decades. She speaks of the ghosts as if they are part of the family. Sometimes they help you find something you lost, she says. Sometimes they make you late for work. You just learn to say good morning, to leave a little food on the table, and to never, ever sit in the empty chair. Maricel's attitude reflects a deep truth. In places where history is heavy, the best response is not fear, but respect. The palace is not a place to conquer, but a place to join. A living story, always changing, always remembering. Cultural anthropologists note that this respect for the unseen is common across the world. In Ireland, people leave a bowl of milk for the fairies. In Japan, offerings are made at roadside shrines for travelers who never returned home. In the Philippines, every All Souls' Day is a national ritual, a day when the whole country pauses to honor its dead. These practices are not just about superstition. They are ways of building bridges between generations, of healing wounds left by war, colonization, and loss. They remind the living that they are part of something larger, and that to forget is to risk repeating the mistakes of the past. In Malacañang, the empty chair stands as a symbol of this connection. It is a place for the ancestors, for the lost, for the stories yet to be told. It is a reminder that every leader is only a guest, every feast a gathering of more than just the living. So, as the rain falls outside the palace walls and the city hums with its nightly rhythm, remember, the past is never truly gone. It waits in the corners, sits at the table, and sometimes, if you listen closely, it whispers your name. Submit your stories at storiesfilipinos.com. Access exclusive content on Patreon. Find show notes and support options in the description. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts. As we draw closer to the present, the ghosts of Malacañang grow quieter, but they never truly leave. New presidents come and go, each bringing their own hopes, fears, and unfinished stories. Each leader is greeted by the same empty chair, the same rituals, the same invisible audience that watches every decision. Some believe the hauntings have grown less frequent as the years pass. Others say it is simply that people have learned to listen better, to live in harmony with the palace's memories rather than fight them. Still, every so often, someone new arrives. A staff member, an advisor, a guest, who feels the weight of the past pressing close, who sees a shadow out of place, or hears a voice that cannot be explained. During one quiet evening, a visiting scholar named Daniel Rivera sat alone in the state dining room, reviewing notes for a history lecture. He felt a cold draft and saw the candles flicker, though the windows were shut tight. Suddenly, the chair at the end of the table scraped back, as if someone had just risen to leave. Daniel froze, heart pounding, waiting for footsteps that never came. When he finally stood to go, he found a folded napkin left on the chair, one he was sure he never touched. Daniel's story is not unique. The palace is full of such moments, small and unsettling, yet deeply meaningful. For every tale of terror, there is another of gentle wonder. A lost ring found where it should not be, a bouquet of flowers blooming out of season, a stranger's laughter echoing in an empty hall. The ghosts of Malacañang, it seems, are not just keepers of pain, but sometimes bringers of hope. This duality is reflected in the palace's architecture. The grand halls and sunlit courtyards invite joy and celebration, while the shadowed stairways and locked doors warn of secrets best left undisturbed. The palace is a place of paradox, where beauty and sorrow walk together, and where the living must learn to make peace with the past. Historical scholars remind us that the palace's story is not unique. In every country, the seat of power is haunted, not just by ghosts, but by consequences. The Kremlin in Moscow, the Forbidden City in Beijing, the palaces of Rome and Vienna. All are said to house more than just the living. In these places, decisions echo for generations, and the cost of forgetting is always high. In the Philippines, perhaps more than anywhere, the ghosts serve as teachers. They warn of pride, of injustice, of the dangers of losing sight of the common good. They remind each new occupant of Malacañang that power is borrowed, not owned, and that every feast must end with a reckoning. And so, the palace endures. Its walls grow older, its gardens change, its halls are painted and repainted, but the stories remain. The empty chair, the unseen guest, the sense that someone somewhere is always witnessing. For the people of the Philippines, Malacañang is not just a building, it is a living memory, a place where past and present meet, where every echo is both warning and invitation. Submit your stories at storiesphilippines.com. Find show notes and support options in the description. Access exclusive content on Patreon. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts. As we leave the palace behind, let's pause for a final moment at the empty chair. The one that stands at every state dinner, every midnight meeting, every quiet conversation in the halls. To outsiders, it might seem like a quirk of tradition, a superstition in a modern world. But for those who truly know Malacañang, the empty chair is a living question, a silent presence, a reminder that history is always waiting for someone to listen. What stories would the chair tell if it could speak? Would it whisper of betrayals and secret alliances, of midnight bargains and broken promises? Would it sing of laughter echoing in the gardens, of children running through the halls, of victories celebrated and sorrows endured? Or would it simply remind us that to lead is to be haunted, not just by the past, but by the hope that we can do better? In every country, every culture, haunted places force us to face what we might forget, that every decision matters, that every life leaves a mark, that every feast will one day end. The ghosts of Malacañang, whether they wear the faces of old presidents, silent servants, or restless children, are not here just to frighten, but to teach. They ask the living to remember, to honor, to be humble in the face of power. And so, the next time you see an empty chair at a family table, in a classroom, in the halls of power, pause. Ask yourself, who is missing? What voices have gone unheard? What lessons are waiting in the silence? In the end, the weight of history is not a burden to be feared, but a story to be embraced. A reminder that we are all part of something larger and older than ourselves. A palace housekeeper once said, "The chair is never really empty. Someone is always waiting to be remembered." And a president, reflecting on her years at the palace, put it this way: "I walked those halls knowing I was not alone. I prayed that I would leave the place kinder than I found it." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share the podcast. Support Stories Philippines financially. Find options in the show notes. Access exclusive content on Patreon and submit your own stories at storiesphilippines.com. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts, behind-the-scenes updates, and more haunting tales from our islands. I am Paul, and this has been Stories Philippines podcast. As you turn off the lights tonight, as you listen to the rain and the echoes in your own home, remember, the empty chair is waiting, the story is not yet finished, and somewhere in the halls of memory, a new chapter is ready to begin. Will you answer the call? Will you listen for the voices of the past? And will you help shape the stories of tomorrow? Thank you for joining me on this journey through haunted halls and heavy history. Be sure to listen to previous episodes and look forward to our next one, where we'll explore more of the Philippines' deepest mysteries. Until then, stay curious, stay brave, and never forget, every great story begins with a question. Who is sitting at your empty chair? Thank you for listening to the Stories Philippines podcast. Please remember to submit your stories at storiesphilippines.com. Check the show notes for ways to support and explore more episodes, past and future. Stay curious, stay brave, and remember, the empty chair is never truly empty.